All right. So we are now live from
All
Baldhead
right.
Island,
My
North
name
Carolina.
is Lee Green, and I'm chairman of the DCCA, the District and County Chairman's Association. Thank you for joining us for our webinar series. And today we welcome Claude Pope, the former chairman of the NCPOP. And Claude will be speaking to us today about leadership. Take it away, Claude.
Thanks, Miss Lee. And again, I'm just thrilled to have everybody tune in and watch. There's no telling how many will see this over the course of the next several weeks, but nonetheless, I appreciate Lee's invitation to talk to you a little bit about leadership. I'm on Baldhead Island right now, which is home for us. Just a little bit of background about myself for those of you who may be new or have not been involved in the party for very long. I've been involved off and on for many years. I first got involved in an official capacity with the party back in the early 90s. As a young man, I managed to get myself elected, anointed, appointed, or roped into being the vice chairman of the Wake County Republican Party. And this was toward the tail end of Governor Martin's term as governor. During that time, my kids were young, probably 8, 6, and 4, and I had a lot of stuff going on. I served for 2 years as a vice chairman. At the same time, I was serving on numerous other committees. I was very involved in the Raleigh Chamber. I was involved on the State Economic Development Board. I was appointed to that board by the governor at the time, and I was doing numerous other things. I was on the Parks Board in Raleigh and just involved in a lot of things in my career. And at the time, with kids being as young as they were, it was not a good time for me to be away from home very much. So the first time I ever quit the party, never really quit it, but I stopped actively being engaged, was after my tenure as a vice chair. That was in 1993. I went on to buy a business in 1995, an office supply company from my former employer. And for the next 12 years, ran that company, grew that company to 3 locations in 2 different states. Kids grew up, sent them to school, sent them to college, and then sold my business in 2007. And then in 2008, met a neighbor at our local neighborhood pool, and come to find out he was involved in the Wake County Republican Party. And I said, "Oh well, I used to do that years ago." And 6 months after that, I got a call and said, "Well, we would be curious if you would run for county chairman." And I said, "Well, gosh, I haven't done anything in 17 years. Why do you want me as a county chairman?" This was right after Obama was elected in 2008. You know, the party's in a funk. Everybody's down. You know, Easley's back in, and it just seems like the world's falling apart or whatever. And nobody wanted the job. I didn't know that at the time, but I agreed to run. I show up at the convention. I'm the only guy running. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I have been snookered into this. So my second involvement with the party was as the county chairman from 2009 through 2010. And that was an interesting time to be involved because the Tea Party was just coming to formation. In fact, we helped organize the very first Tea Party rally on the Capitol grounds that April. Had a mass of people there. Did another one the next year. So we were very involved in that. And also we had some heady local elections going on. We had a school board election in 2009, and we ended up, make a short story long, we ended up flipping a school board from an 8-1 minority to a 5-4 Republican majority in 2009. That was a huge win for us. And then we followed that up in 2010 by flipping our county commission from a 3-4 minority to a 4-3 majority. So we had 2 back-to-back huge wins in Wake County. We were working with the Tea Party folks. We were working actually across party lines on some of the nonpartisan races, and were able to build a coalition to win that school board. Well, that just caused all sorts of consternation with the Democratic Party. You know, education is kind of their sacred cow, and that just stirred them up, got them mad, which we were thrilled about. But nonetheless, I had another opportunity come up in late 2010, and that was to acquire another business. And that business happened to be on Bald Head Island. So I once again left the party. And right after the 2010 election, right after we elected our county commission, I stepped away from the chairmanship in Wake County. We moved to Bald Head Island full time. We bought a grocery store, and we have been here ever since. We have 75 employees in the summer. We have 22 employees maybe in the winter. It's an extreme seasonal business, as you can imagine. But while we were down here, we also did a couple of fundraisers for Governor McCrory, who was, of course, Mayor McCrory at the time, and I did one for Tillis as well. And then once McCrory got elected, I got another phone call. So, would you consider being state party chairman? So I agreed to do that. Ran in 2013 against a terrific opponent who's become a very good friend of mine, Jack Brosh. We traveled all over the state giving stump speeches and all, and I managed to win state party chairman with a 71% vote. So I've been serving the last 2 years as state party chairman and stepped down from that just this past June. So I have left the party 3 times: early '93, late 2010, and just as recently as 2 months ago. I say left the party, left an official capacity of the party. I'm really a business person at heart. I'm really an entrepreneur, which is a passion of mine. I'm not a politician, but I'm pretty good at organizing, working with groups, building coalitions, building relationships, and trying to get people marching in the same direction. That's really, I guess, a talent I've kind of fallen into. So what I wanted to talk about today was leadership. And leadership is a really fuzzy concept. You know, you could say Hitler was a leader because he was able to, you know, motivate millions of people to march into a battle against really a demonic cause, if you want to call it that. But as negative as he was still a leader. There have been some great positive leaders over time. Ronald Reagan comes to mind, of course. And so leadership can mean different things to different people. But what I want to focus on is, what does it mean to be a party leader? Because prior to election as a party leader, we all have our own philosophies of how we think the party should run, what kind of platform, what kind of candidate, what kind of policy. We all kind of get into the weeds with that. But once you become a party leader, much of that has to be put aside because when you chair a county, you're chairing the entire party of that county. You're not just chairing one faction or another. You got to lead them all. You got to lead every Republican in your county. And there is just as many different flavors of Republicanism in your county as there are, types of trees that they grow on. I mean, we are a very diverse party. So trying to lead a diverse party like that, you really have to put your own philosophies aside so that you can be trusted to lead others. Because the number one job of a party leader isn't to necessarily espouse a particular philosophy. It's to get Republicans elected. Your number one job is to elect Republicans at your local level. That's it. It's up to the candidates to fight for and get through their primaries. It's up to those candidates to communicate what they believe to the voting public, and if it's a primary, to the voting Republicans that vote in that primary. Ultimately, Republican Party leaders are much akin to what I would say would be like the USGA. If there's any golfers out there, The USGA stands for the United States Golf Association. Okay, USGA sets the rules. They say that the cup is going to be, 4.25 inches wide, that a golf club can have no more of a bend ratio in its shaft, that the ball has to have this kind of bounce coming off of the club head, that here's how you keep score, here are the rules of the game. They are the keeper of the rules. It's up to the professional golfer to actually go out on the course and win that tournament playing by those rules. So the Republican Party, much like the Democratic Party, we have our own rules. And those rules are laid out in our plan of organization. For example, party leaders cannot make endorsements in primaries. That's one of the rules of our plan of organization. There are other rules that are enumerated in there as well, but we're basically the keeper of the rules. And so our job is to make sure that the candidates have a fair shot and a fair access to the party resources, that if they win their primary, those party resources then become available to each one of those candidates so that we can ultimately elect them to office. Ultimately, our job is to elect Republicans to public office, period. So it's not up to a party official to say that one particular plank of a platform is better than another, or we agree or we disagree. We already know where we stand in general anyway. So our job is more to do the organization, to get out the vote, to communicate who the candidates are that are on the ballot, to provide access to those candidates in your particular county or district, and to make sure that your meetings are fair and open and that you facilitate the debate. So I'm going to talk about a few of some of these concepts as we go on. So anyhow, when you lead all Republicans, you've got to be able to build relationships across those factions. And part of being a good leader is knowing how to build those relationships. You are the primary conduit between the elected officials, soft money organizations, upline party officials, campaigns, and even the media. You're the conduit from all of those other organizations to the organization that's in your jurisdiction. So people are looking to you to help guide them to understand your district. What are your voters like? What are your voters not like? What are their hot buttons? What are their issues? They're looking for you to help guide them through there, but they're not looking to you. Well, they may ask, but you shouldn't endorse any of those candidates, especially in a primary. So you want to make sure that all of those resources are open and available to each one of those candidates. And as the primary conduit, that means that it doesn't mean that you necessarily agree with those elected officials, but they're looking to you for support in those areas. So building those relationships is very, very important. Now, I remember when I ran for state party chairman, one of the very first questions I got was, are you going to make any endorsements in primaries? And I said, of course I'm not. That's not my job to do that. And of course, toward the tail end, we had a state convention up in Cherokee, and the issue came up on the floor of the convention. There were then counties that wanted to make endorsements. I said, well, guys, you can't do that. You didn't want me to make an endorsement, and now you want to make an endorsement? It goes against the plan. So the rules are there for everybody to play by, whether you're Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson on the golf course, or whether you're Burr or Brannon or Tillis in a primary. The rules are there to protect everybody and to give everybody equal access. One of the sacred rules is you can't make endorsements in a primary, period. So if that one principle upsets you or causes consternation, or you don't feel that you can do that and therefore perform the duties of a party leader, you probably should step aside and go to work for a campaign, go to work for your favorite candidate, or go to work for another organization that espouses a certain principle or a philosophy, because you're going to be miserable in this role. But if you can buy into the philosophy that we are here to elect Republicans to office, and that if you can make it through a primary, you're our guy and you're our gal, and we're going to take you across the finish line. That's ultimately what party leadership is all about. If you can't do that, kindly step aside, let somebody else step up and let them lead, and then you go on and help your favorite candidate win. Understanding that role, a couple of other points that I'll make about leadership. Know what you're good at and what you're not good at. There's certain things that I'm pretty good at. There's other things I'm really lousy at. But one of the things is that you can always build a team of folks. And if you surround yourself with people that are better than you at doing those things that you're not good at doing, then you're going to do a great job. Set the example for others around you. If other people see that you're willing to work the phones, to bang the yard signs, to get out there, even when it's 15 degrees and you're trudging in the snow, or when it's 110 and you're sweating bullets, if people see that you're willing to do that, they're going to be more likely to follow you. One of my biggest principles, and I've espoused this not only to other party officials, but to elected officials as well, sometimes to my chagrin and to my frustration utterly. But one of my biggest principles is this: praise in public and criticize in private. If our governor and our Senate and our House would live by that one principle alone, we could have this budget done 3 months ago. We would be in a much better position in state government right now. And your party would be in a much better position at the local county level. Republicans, we are passionate people. We tend to want to pick fights sometimes. We tend to want to defend our honor. And one of the things that people love to do is they love to throw barbs and jabs and everything. They're Americans. They love to fight. But in this business of politics, endeavor to praise in public and then criticize in private. If you've got an issue with somebody, if it's your mayor, if it's the governor, if it's one of your precinct chairmen or whoever that is, if you're in the middle of a 15 or 20 person meeting, make sure you praise them. After the meeting, pull them aside and say, look, buddy, we really need to have a little prayer meeting on this issue or that issue or whatever. That person will appreciate it much more. You're not going to embarrass them in public. You're not going to make yourself look foolish for criticizing somebody else in public. And although some people think that makes them feel stronger or bigger or better, no, it makes you look silly. Just absolutely silly. Praise in public, criticize in private. No policy will ever change in state government if you first don't elect Republicans. There are some folks still out there who believe with all their heart, and I believe with all my heart that they're absolutely wrong, but they believe that losing on principle is a good idea. I'm here to tell you, if you want to lose on principle because the Republican nominee isn't as pure as you think they should be, we are destined to be a minority party forever. You will never get a chance at changing anything. The first thing we have to do is we have to have a majority. You can't govern without a majority. And once you have that majority, you can't change the world in 1 term or 2 terms. Listen, it took 50 years of progressive liberalism to get us to where we are today. We're not going to change that in 1 session of the General Assembly or 1 term of the governor or 1 term of the Senate or even 1 term of a president. It takes time. So do not get hung up on this notion of, well, I'm not going to vote for this Republican because my principles won't allow me to vote for him or whatever. Listen, I would much rather have a weak Republican than a strong Democrat any day of the week. And that's what it means to be a party person. We get our party first, and then we figure out how to perfect our party. We're in the process now trying to perfect our party now that we have some of these majorities. That's going to take another 20 years. That's okay. At least we have the majority and we have time to do that. Losing on principle is never a good idea because it leaves the left in charge and it helps them to more firmly entrench bad policy. Look at Obamacare now. That's going to be more and more difficult to unwind the more years go by. And so that's the cost of not electing Mitt Romney in 2012. And some folks stayed home on principle because they thought Romney was X, Y, or Z. They didn't want to get in bed with him. Well, guess what? We got stuck with Obamacare because you wanted to lose on principle. So leave that at the door. And as a party leader, you can't think that way either. One of the other principles that I think is important, and this kind of goes hand in hand, is that success is a journey. It is not a destination. A lot of people get hung up on this notion that, well, gosh, now that we got a Republican governor, the world's going to be a better place here in North Carolina. Now that we have a Republican Senate, a Republican House. No, it's a process. And we are always trying to make it better. You never arrive. The only time when you've arrived is when they lower that box 6 feet under. Now you've arrived. Until then, we are all on this journey, and it's a journey together. So, it took 140 years for us to get that Republican majority here in North Carolina. But now that we have it, the world's not going to change in 1 or 2 years. We need at least a 30-year majority just to make a dent in it. It'll take 30 years just to flush out the bureaucrats, for crying out loud. So, and I joke with people, we need that long just to get our own bureaucrats in. But at least I'd rather have a Republican bureaucrat who appreciates hard work, honesty, experience, and can caretake the dollars better than a Democratic bureaucrat. So we will work to perfect that majority as time goes on. But we can't perfect a majority that we don't have. Some personal habits of great leaders I'll talk a little bit about. And this one is huge. If you take your eye off yourself and you put it on others, you will end up getting everything that you want in life. And so think of it this way. If you help your precinct chairman win their precincts, you're going to win your county. But if you focus too much on trying to win your county and you ignore your precinct chairs and they all lose, guess what? You're going to lose. So as a state chairman, my job was to help the county chairman win their counties. If I helped enough counties win their county, we'd win the state. So take your eye off yourself and put it on somebody else and say, don't worry about me. What can I do to help you? Where do you need assistance? Do you need advice? Do you need a kick in the pants? Do you need fundraising? Do you need an expert to come in? Do you need a speaker? Do you need help organizing your next? Where are you in the weeds, and how can I help you get out of those weeds? You as a leader, people are looking to you for that kind of help. Now, you may not think you have all of those answers, but they think you do because they elected you the chairman. So even if you don't know them all, sometimes you have to, what I call, fake it till you make it. And they may not know that you don't know, but you don't have to let them know that you don't know. If you don't know the answer, call somebody else. Hey, how can we help this county out here? They've got a pig picking. They want to know where they can buy a pig. All right. So whatever that question is, help them. And if you help enough other people get what they want in life, you'll automatically, by default, get what you want. Bad leaders, by the way, do just the opposite. All they want to do is help themselves. Another principle, and this is important because you're going to be around a lot of people. Anybody can be up when they're up, but a leader is always up even when they're down. And that's a tough thing to do. We've all got stuff going on at home. The tire went flat, the pipe burst, the cat ran away. We've all got stuff going on at home. The last thing a room full of people wants to hear is your sorry life going on at home. They don't want to hear that. They want to be inspired. So forget about your cat, forget about your flat tire, forget about your eczema, forget about all of the other little problems that you've got. People have enough problems of their own. They don't want to hear about your problems. You go in there and you get up, you smile, you tell them how wonderful the day is and how great things are going to be now that Republicans are in charge. you need to be their inspiration, because you know what? They probably had a pretty bad day along the line too. Last thing they want is to hear somebody else's no good, horrible, terrible, very bad day. Be up even when you're down. Good leaders can attract great talent. And they're constantly surrounded by enthusiastic people who are much smarter than the leader themselves. Bad leaders, on the other hand, they tend to want to be the smartest person in the room, and therefore they struggle in inspiring others to follow and do the grunt work, because nobody wants to be around them, because that leader makes them feel inadequate, not smart enough, not bright enough, or whatever. But a good leader knows how much they don't know, and they're able to attract smart, bright, intelligent people. They're able to inspire them, and they're able to build a team around them. Bad leaders have a problem with that. So they struggle inspiring others. Good leaders also learn how to say no, and they also learn when to say yes. You're going to be asked a million times, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you be here? Can you come to this meeting? Can you travel here or there, whatever? You're going to have to learn sometimes you got to say no. And your situations are going to be different than my situations. But you can't be everywhere, and you can't make everybody happy. So learn how to say no, and learn when you need to say yes. Good leaders also listen more and talk less. And I heard it said one time that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. He wants us to listen twice as much as he wants us to talk. And that's kind of odd on a webinar here where all I'm doing is talking. But hopefully we'll get to some Q&A later on down the road. But listen to your people. They want to be heard. And I think if more leaders took the time to listen to the gripes and complaints and issues, especially of the disaffected factions that are out there, most people at the end of the day, they just want to be heard. They want not to be ignored. If you'll listen to them, that doesn't mean you have to agree with them, or that doesn't mean you necessarily have to do what they ask you to do. They just want an ear. So listen to them more and preach to them less. Good leaders are not afraid of debate, but rather they encourage and facilitate debate. And then once that debate happens and a vote is taken, they honor and uphold that final vote, regardless of the outcome. One of the things that we did in Wake County, and I tried to do this also at the state level, as I hammered home to our executive boards, let the debate happen in the room. But once the debate shuts down, once we vote, regardless of the outcome of that vote represents the will of your body, period. We all leave the room united behind that vote, period. So if you're going to do that, you have to make sure that you have an environment within that meeting that facilitates the debate. If you're perceived as trying to shut down debate or shut somebody up that really wants to speak, that's not a good thing. Let them talk. If there's a time limit, enforce the time limit, of course. But there will become a point in time when a vote will be taken. Let the vote happen, count the votes, and whatever the outcome of that vote is, that's the decision of your executive committee. You all leave the room marching behind that decision. Now, sometimes that's hard to do, especially if it's a 51-49 vote. Those are really tough because you're really not together then. I mean, that's kind of a split vote. One of the things we tried to do in Wake County, and we were successful at doing this actually at the state county, is we passed a rule that said that resolutions must be approved by a 2/3 vote of the body. And the reason we did that is we figured, if you can get 2/3 of Republicans to agree on a resolution, whatever that resolution says, that's a pretty strong endorsement of that position. And that means it's a whole lot easier to leave that room united when you've got a higher threshold for approval of major decisions. That could be endorsements, that could be resolutions, it could be changes to a plan of organization, whatever that is. The higher that threshold, the tougher it is to reach it. But once you reach it, you got a pretty united party right there. So if you can, at your local level, if you've got resolutions or stuff, try to get through a rule and explain that rule to your folks to up that threshold from a simple majority up to a 3/5 or a 2/3 or whatever level that you feel comfortable with. That makes a stronger, more unified party leaving that room. Let's see, what else have I got? Good leaders know how to balance their personal lives with their political lives. That's a tough one. They also know when to walk away, which I've done 3 times. So I learned how to do that. A bad leader sometimes doesn't know when or how to quit being a bad leader. Ultimately, what happens is that they fail, and they usually crash and burn in flames of defeat rather than just walking away. Some people just can't leave it alone. Some people just simply need to get a life. They need to go find another job. They need to go do something else because this business of politics has got them so worked up that they're always in an ill mood. They can never really fully engage. They've lost most of their friends. Their wife is always fussing at them, or their husband, because they're never around. And when they are, all they do is piss and moan about Obama or the governor or whoever else is getting on their case that day. You know, sometimes you just need to leave well enough alone. Bad leaders don't know how to do that, though. They tend to hang around, and the longer they hang around, the more ostracized they become, and then that just kind of feeds on itself, and sooner or later, somebody just defeats them. And then they go home with their tail tucked between their legs, and you might have lost a pretty good precinct worker at the same time. So you really don't want to do that. But a good leader knows how to balance their personal lives with their political lives. You're going to have to balance sleep, work, home, church, business, friendships, and your own physical and mental health at the same time. And some of that's hard to do when there's so many demands on your time. But if you'll carve out with your wife those blocks of time that you need to be together for that next year, and that's hard to do sometimes, thinking out that far. But Melissa and I did that, and we knew exactly when we were going to shut the phone down and shut the email down and get on an airplane and go somewhere. In fact, I took criticism for taking a trip to Scotland last fall in some of the blogs, but you know what? That was on my calendar, and darn it, I was going to go because my marriage depended on it. But you need to learn how to block those times off. You know what? Benjamin Franklin had it right. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. That's what saved me. I was in bed by 9 or 10 at night. I was up at 4 or 5 in the morning. And those first few hours in the morning, I had no distractions. I could reply to emails. I could plan my day. I could leave early and try to make a meeting at 9 or 10, 3 hours away. I had the time to do that. But also when I was home, I tried to give every waking moment that I had when I was home back to my family. That balance is very, very important when you're in a role, especially if you're still working for somebody else and you have a full-time job. Good leaders, given no prior experience with someone, should always trust first and then verify. And that may seem odd, but unless somebody has already proven themselves untrustworthy, trust them. You have no reason not to. But a bad leader never trusts anybody. They are always suspicious. They think that there's conspiracies going on, or they question their motives. What does this person want from me? What do they really want from me? Et cetera, et cetera. You know what? That's a tough way to live your life if you're always kind of on the edge and suspicious of everybody. You know what? Trust first, verify. If somebody loses your trust, obviously, then you deal with that at that time. But if you go into a relationship with a big wall up, you know what? You're going to have a hard time working with that individual down the road. They may earn your trust later, but it's going to be a lot tougher rather than going ahead and giving them that trust on the outset. If they lose it, you know what? That's their own fault. But trust them first, verify, but don't be kind of suspicious of every motive that they all have. Some people actually have pretty good motives. A good leader knows how to ask for help. Sometimes it's real easy to think, well, gosh, if I ask for help, they're going to think I'm weak, or I don't know what I'm doing, or, I'm a lightweight, or, whatever. You know what? Ask. Make sure you're asking the right person, though. If you're a county chairman and you've got a question, call another county chairman. They've probably been in the same weeds that you've been in. They probably have the same issues. They might even have the same issue going on at the same time. So don't ever be afraid to ask for help. And that help could be money, it could be time, it could be support, whatever that is that you need. If you don't ask for it, you're probably not going to get it. It's not just going to descend from the sky and all of a sudden make everything right. A good leader also will find something nice to say, even about their detractors. That's a tough one too, man. You got somebody that walks into your meeting that you had a fight with 2 weeks ago at a different meeting. Man, the first thing you want to do is start throwing knives and barbs and everything like that. You know what? You can disarm them just like that by saying, hey, so-and-so, man, your hair looks terrific today. Have you lost some weight? Man, you look really, really good. That'll disarm them just like that. Now, they may be suspicious or whatever, but you know what? Guess what? If you treat people with kindness and respect, even your own detractors, you will quickly disarm them. And what you might find is that somebody that you may have thought was a mortal enemy of yours, actually, y'all are going to end up in battle arm in arm, and you're going to go into battle together one day. So don't just assume that a detractor is a detractor for life. Treat them with kindness, treat them with respect and dignity. They're a Republican too. They want to win just as bad as you do. Don't just assume that they're out to get you. And you can disarm them really, really easy by just overwhelming them with kindness. Sometimes you need to have a prayer meeting with people. And if you do, and I gave this advice to a recent district chair, I said, if you make it a sandwich the bad with two goods. So you start a prayer meeting by saying, you know what, man, you did a great job organizing that event last week, but you know what, we really need to work on X, Y, and Z, or I got an issue with here or there, or whatever. But then end that discussion with, I'm really looking forward to your next big event, and I know you're going to do an even better job then. Always sandwich a bad with two goods on either end. This other individual who I was giving this advice to, she started every conversation with barbs and jabs and negative and all. And I'm like, look, nobody wants to be around you anymore. They just don't want to be around the negativity. It was interesting. I saw her recently and she said, that was some pretty good advice you gave me. And I have been trying my best to follow it. She said, I don't always follow it, but I have tried. And it has made a world of difference in how that individual communicates with other individuals. So sometimes we have to have uncomfortable, unpleasant conversations. If you find yourself in that situation, sandwich it between two goods. Find something good. Man, I like your car. I like your beach. I like your whatever. Man, your grass looks good. Have you been fertilizing it? It doesn't matter what it is. Sandwich it with two goods between the bad. A good leader never takes anything personally, whereas a bad leader takes everything personally. And not only do they take it personally, but then they'll hold a grudge for years or a lifetime. Don't be that person that takes anything personally. It's just politics. It's just business. It's not life or death. Some may blow it out of proportions to be life and death. But you know what? Life goes on, and America is going to survive all of this craziness that we're going through right now. And so don't take anything personally. There'll be a point in time when you're out of the political arena and you're still going to want friends and family to come see you on Thanksgiving or come to your parties or come to your weddings and all that kind of stuff. You don't want to alienate them or not invite them because they said something about your philosophy or you stood up on point 14 at the platform at the state convention and they disagreed with you, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Look, guys, life is too short. Let's go live life and let's enjoy it and let's get into battle with each other. Some random thoughts and then I'll wind up. Thank everybody. Thank them for showing up. Thank them for not showing up. Thank them for hosting a meeting. Thank them for returning your phone call. If you have a chance to send them a text, thank you, a handwritten thank you. I've got a thank you note right here on my wall that I taped up on my wall because it was the only presidential candidate that thought enough of me to write a handwritten thank you note, and I've met them all. But this individual wrote me a thank you. Guess what? I remembered that. They may not get elected, but you know what? I still have their note on my wall. Thank you notes in this age of electronics mean everything because most people, all they get in their mailbox anymore is junk. And they're too busy to read every text and every email. You send a handwritten thank you note, it's going to get open and it's going to get remembered. And that goes a long, long way with your people. So thank everybody. Start or join a peer group. I talked about this a little bit earlier. You're a county chair, you're a district chair. You don't know what you don't know. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get in the weeds. The last person you need advice from is a precinct chair trying to teach you how to be a good county chair. They may be a smart person, but it's hard to listen to a doctor teach you how to be a lawyer. You need to listen to somebody else that has been where you want to be. So go find another county chair, call me, call a prior, anybody that's been a county chair, district chair, state chair, call them up and say, look, I'm in the weeds, man. And it'd be an even better call if it was a call from somebody that you had a factional disagreement with 5 years ago. And all of a sudden you're getting a call from this random person. Guess what? I need your advice. You know what? That's pretty cool because at the end of the day, we're all leaders. We're all doing the same things. We all have the same goals. So seek out peer groups of individuals that can help you succeed. Your doctor can't help you. Your lawyer can't help you. The person running your phone bank can't help you. But there's counties all around you that have county chairs that are probably going through the same stuff that you're going through. Seek them out. Have coffee with them and commiserate. If you're going to commiserate, do it in private with other county chairs so that when you come back, you come back with a wealth of wisdom and all that kind of stuff. If you're going to read books, it's fun to read, a book from Newt Gingrich or one of the other politicians or one of the many candidates that are out there. Hell, they've all written books nowadays. I would encourage you to take your time to read books on success and leadership because we all have a pretty good handle on the policy stuff already. Do you really need to know what paragraph 38 on page 400 is of Trump's tax plan is? Well, sooner or later we'll get around to that. But, I'd be more interested in the art of the deal versus what his tax plan is because that's what's putting him at the top right now. It isn't his policy. He's upside down on many policies with many, many Republicans. But there's a lot of people following him because he's learned how to inspire and he's learned how to lead. Whether he makes the cut or not at the end of the day, time will tell, of course. But read books about success and read books on leadership. It'll make you a better leader. And then lastly, don't take yourself too seriously. You have an important job, but you're not the most important person in the world. You're a county chairman, you're a district chairman, but you're also just Bob, just Joe. You're just a son. You're just a dad. When you come home from being a big shot sometimes, the last thing your wife or husband wants to hear is, oh, I sat and had lunch with so-and-so today or whatever. They don't really care. You know what? They've got issues. The cat ran away. The tire went flat. They're in the weeds with their own lives. Don't get hung up on your own importance, and be humble in the process, because everybody else has a life too, and their life doesn't always mesh with the passions that you have. And ask how their day was, rather than just starting out every conversation. Let me tell you what I did today. So these are just random thoughts. Lee, I've been rambling on and on and on. I don't even know if we have anybody on the phone anymore. But let's open it up and see if anybody's got questions. And it doesn't matter what it is. If I can't answer it, I'll tell you I can't answer that question. So,
thank you so much. You made such a number of good points. All right, everybody, unmute your sound and ask away. I'll start off by just asking, what leadership books would you recommend? What did you find helpful?
Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill is a great book. That's been around for 60 years, 70 years, maybe even longer. Some books that may sound quaint, but Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Read Henry Ford's biography. A great book on entrepreneurship is Titan, which is the story of John D. Rockefeller. What an incredible journey that man had, basically creating the oil industry. At the time he retired in his early 50s, the automobile hadn't even been invented. He made more money in retirement than he ever made prior to retirement. Prior to retirement, he basically took oil and turned it into kerosene and put the whale oil business out of business. He retires, automobile comes along, and this volatile byproduct called gasoline all of a sudden had a marketable use. And he made a bloody fortune. But anyway, read books about Stephen Jobs. Read books about successful people and how they became successful, what their leadership styles were like. To make all the difference in the world.
Anybody else want to jump in? Well, I do have another question.
Okay.
One of the hardest things is to get precinct chairmen to really start contacting the people in their precinct, just to actually start knocking on doors, making those phone calls. Any advice on how to motivate and inspire them to really dedicate themselves to it?
Nothing can take the place of actually sitting down with them over coffee, pulling out your call list, and say, you know what, I'll make the first 10 calls with you. And you tell me about this person. Oh, he's my neighbor down the street. What do you know about him? Oh, so okay, great. Pick up the phone. Hey, I'm sitting here with your neighbor Bob. He's your precinct chairman, and you know what? He wanted me to call you and give you hell for not coming to the last meeting. Just make it fun, make it lighthearted. We did this in making fundraising calls and just had a ball doing it. And I call these people, and a lot of times you get voicemail, and the second call, third call, fourth call. You know what? Keep calling, because sooner or later they're going to call you back. If nothing else, just to shut you up. Like, I'm done. I'm not giving. Whatever. Just don't call me anymore. Typically, when they call back, they've got something. Yes, I'll show up at a meeting. Yes, I'll write a check, etc. So persistence, but help that precinct person make those first few calls. And what you're doing there is you're not only setting the example, but you're teaching them at the same time. And you're teaching them how to do it in kind of a lighthearted manner. And you may get results, you may not, but at least you made the calls. Anybody else? Now, Lee, do I need to unmute people, or do people unmute themselves? Here, I'm just going to hit unmute on these here. So, Brent, you're unmuted. Let's see. Who's that on the iPad?
That's John Anglin.
Hey, John.
Hey, how you doing, Claude?
I'm doing fine. I don't know how long you've been on, but
For the
apologies for rambling.
No worries. I have a little bit of a spotty connection.
Okay.
The question I have is, you were kind of talking about how you went from, your on your county commissioners, we got that similar scenario here in Yancey where majority Democrats and wanted to certainly swing it to majority Republicans.
Right.
And, what would be, if you had a had a top 5, if you will, of what to focus on as a new chairman in this county, what would that recommendation be to start seeing a real good grassroots effort and seeing that accomplished? As I mentioned earlier to y'all on the phone, we're really trying to, take a hold of it seems like there's more interest in the 30-something crowd, 20-something crowd, and, the values of the Republican Party here locally than there is in the Democrat Party, which is a great start. But I just pose that question to you.
Sure. Tell me about the makeup of your county commission right now.
Well, it's 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. The way that it's weighted is in Yancey County, there are 2 Democrats who will stay. The one Democrat incumbent would have to run again, but I think is probably not going to run, but it'll be 3 Democrats against 3 Republicans, who are incumbents right now. So that's
okay. So you've got an open seat.
Yeah, we're basically, we're going to be vying for 3 seats on a county commissioners board of 5 total.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for that 3rd seat, so you have 3 Republicans running, or you have 4, 5, 6 Republicans running?
Right now, we know that the incumbents will be running again. We're still working on as far as other people throwing their name into the hat. That's not happened just yet, but we envision that's going to be the case for sure.
Well, your number one goal right now is to recruit a top-notch candidate. Absolutely. To run for that open seat. It's a whole lot easier to win an open seat than it is to defeat an incumbent, regardless of the party. An open seat is an open invitation to steal the majority in your county. And so if the other 2 seats are relatively safe, they're good people, there's no controversies or somebody kind of coming after them, I'd put most of your resources into winning that 3rd seat. Because if you win the 3rd seat, you've got the majority. If you spend too much money trying to protect the first 2 in races that they're probably already pretty safe, then that's an opportunity that's really wasted, because the 3rd race doesn't get the kind of resources that it could get in order to win. So your goal is to win the majority. And to do that, you need a good candidate. That candidate needs to have a pretty good relationship with the other 2, because that person's going to depend on the other 2 to help them along. And then you need a party that's unified behind all 3 of the candidates. Because if one of them's kind of goofy or whatever, and they don't inspire the electorate, it's going to be hard to turn out the vote to get the majority, because, well, Billy Bob, well, he did this, or he didn't pay my parking lot, or whatever. And so those are some of the local drama things you have to overcome. But then, pick a budget, an amount of money that you think it's going to take to reach your electorate in 3 different mailings. So that means you need to define that population. Is it 10,000? Is it 30,000? How many of them are likely to vote? Winnow that number down, and then come up with a budget to hit them 3 times with direct mail. Direct mail is still the most powerful way to get to that person. And at least with direct mail, you've got them for 20 seconds or a minute, however long it takes to go from the mailbox to the trash can. But they're at least got it in their hand, and they're going to read it, skim it, look, oh, I know Billy Bob, whatever. So you need a direct mail budget. You need a robocall budget. Everybody hates them, but they work. You need to have voter guides at the precincts. Who's working the precincts? And I mean, that's just the basic blocking and tackling that you need to do. But the most important thing is if you have a unifying message that all 3 of those candidates can get around. Maybe it's property taxes, maybe it's your school board, maybe it's something else that unifies those 3 as a body against the other Democrats. In Wake County, we came up with a kind of a goofy, campy radio ad, and it said something like Coble, Bryan, Matthew, et cetera. They're the ones who won't raise taxes. Gurley, Coble, Bryan, Matthews, they're the ones who won't raise taxes. And we just repeated that over and over, and we bought as much radio as we could. And as simple as that sounded, that unified that message. We're not going to raise taxes. Now, there's 140 issues out there, taxes is usually a pretty good one to hit on. But find that issue that works for you, and then just hammer it home. To raise that money, first you got to know how much money you need to raise. So
Right.
you can do all the math and say we need $38,213.12 to do 3 mailings that are going to hit on this Tuesday, the following Monday, and 3 Wednesdays, and we need another $2,600 to do 14 robocalls. If you have a very specific budget, it's a whole lot easier to raise money when you call a donor and you say, I need $13,216 and your $5,000 will get us, 42% to the goal. Rather than calling somebody and say, if you wrote me a $5,000 check, I'd really appreciate it. There's a big difference. But just a couple of ideas there. Don't know if that made any sense or not, but hopefully that'll help.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Claude, I'm wondering, for those of us in heavily Democratic-dominated counties and districts, what are your thoughts on running Republican candidates in that situation? Is there value in making them spend? Is the other side spend money? Is there value in just looking at it as an educational opportunity to talk about our issues? Or are you just burning your volunteers out? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you want to move the needle, period. And so if you're in a heavily Democratic district, but you can move the needle locally by 200 votes, by 2,000 votes, you may not win, but those extra 2,000 votes on a statewide level could mean a huge difference. Dan Forrest only won by 6,000 votes last time. And I don't know exactly where that breakdown was on a county by county level, but I bet you he did very, very strong in otherwise Democratic candidates because the Republicans because the Republicans in those counties probably didn't have anybody else to fight for. So they went to battle for Dan Forrest because, well, the local county commissioner, that's a done deal. The sheriff, he's a done deal. He's Democrat. He's not leaving. All right, who's left? Okay, let's go to battle for Dan. So you want to move the needle. And if you can move that needle, then you're helping everybody else across the state. And that's so important on the council of state and judicial races. So don't assume that, well, we can't win, therefore we shouldn't try. That's a cop-out. You want to fight for every vote you can get, and you want to run that as if it were a Republican county. Listen, Wake County was one of the most liberal counties, still is, in the whole state. We were able to win a school board. We were able to win a county commission. And because we focused on the local races, we actually had coattails going up line versus coattails coming down line.
Amazing.
We fought for the local races, and those led up to Burr. For example, Burr carried Wake County for the first time in history for a Republican back in 2010. Helms never carried Wake County. So for the county folks that are out there, if you'll focus on your local races, then you can get people to show up to a city council, village council, county commission, school board race, and you've got those folks energized, they're going to vote for every other Republican up the line, don't you think? It worked for us in Wake County, so we can do it for you too.
Excellent. Well, Claude, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. There was so many valuable suggestions. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, everybody, and keep on keeping on, and go GOP.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to hit the end button now.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
All right.